Now, this is probably going to be a long one. I think I'm about ready to do this. Does Game of Thrones suck? In my opinion, is the show ruined from how season 8 ended? In my opinion, for a while, I've been hesitant to even respond to anything like this. I mean, obviously, I initially said my feelings about it, and I've gone back and rewatched it, and you know what? I can't finish it. I can watch all of these series all the way up until Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 4, and then I realize I know what's coming the next two episodes. If you want to go find a video, where people are sharing their opinion, bashing the fuck out of the show, rightfully so, their opinion is their opinion, then go and look on YouTube and find one of those videos. This probably isn't going to contain too much bashing, because what I realize is that everything comes to an end. I could argue for probably 15 to 20 minutes the point that some of the fan theories that I came up with or that were sent to me were better than how the actual series turned out. But guess what? I wasn't in that writer's room, and I had nothing to do with the series. Now, through these months and months of me sort of having all the time in the world to think about this series and how big of an impact it actually had on my life, I've come up with one thing that I think rings all the way through, and that's the show, sort of what I just touched on, is that it end. All good things must come to an end. And what I did to sort of help me get over and get out of this debate, really to make this video, to talk about it, or I guess this podcast, whatever you want to call it, is by watching other series that are critically acclaimed. One of those being Breaking Bad. And if you haven't watched that series, I think it ended in 2013 or some shit like that. If you haven't seen that, I'm about to bring up a little bit of spoilers from that, so go ahead and skip forward a few minutes, I guess. But while I was watching that series, I realized that, first off, it was not meant to be binged watch. After season 2, halfway through season 3, it really starts to just slow down, and you can tell they're just filling up time. But one thing I hear about that show, without getting into too much detail, is that it's the greatest of all time. Most people love the ending through and through. It is the greatest show of all time. And Game of Thrones, especially with how it ended, doesn't even come close to it. I've heard that and read that online a million times over. And my opinion is just as informed as the next guy, and this is my channel, so I can go ahead and say it. Well, you're fucking wrong. Breaking Bad had some amazing moments, for what it was. But honestly, it's not really even close to the level of Game of Thrones. Just, maybe you can disagree with me down in the comment section, but one of the things that makes television so good is that you get long, drawn-out forms of something that, it takes a long time for the story to build up, but also you get to spend way more time with characters that you love on screen, because it's not like in a movie. They don't have to burn through crazy events and have like a third act and all this bullshit. They can spend their time telling that story, so it's more impactful and more emotional, in my opinion, better, because you get to spend, like I said, more time with your favorite characters on screen. All that aside, there were several issues with Breaking Bad, and this video isn't about Breaking Bad, so I'm going to quickly move past this, but Breaking Bad, its biggest issue is that it was on AMC. They didn't have time to really go outside of a small world that they built, which was, the Albuquerque, New Mexico town. They tried to pull in the cartels that were coming in from Mexico, and that sort of expanded the plot. But the whole time watching, I'm thinking, oh, it's really about to go down with these cartel guys, and it never really does. We all know the type of capabilities and the shit that goes on down in Mexico right now in the real world, and I feel like they sort of wanted to keep it small. Game of Thrones was more successful, in my opinion, in that sort of world building sense, and what made it a much better series is that the world seemed large. We did spend a bunch of time in King's Landing and in Winterfell, and sort of like characters camping out in the middle of like some beautiful scenery in the background in the woods and shit, but the world itself and the characters felt way more developed and blown out than Breaking Bad. But just sort of bringing this all back around, and my main point of this video is that no matter how a show ends or how a series, what the ultimate climax is, and then where they go from that route, whether it's killing off a character and then everyone says, okay, it's gotten bad from then, or whether they just sort of are trying to make as much money as possible like The Walking Dead, you're always going to have your people who hate a show. the difference from back in 2013, that was like 6-7 years ago, but the difference between now and then is that now you have people like me who make videos on YouTube, and they get to broadcast their opinion to millions of people, millions of fucking people. You're going to find someone, because there's so many of us that make these, A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, and just review review videos in general and upload them to YouTube. You're going to find someone who agrees with your opinion. In that, section of the audience, who myself is included, I think a vast majority of people who are fans of the show, is safe to say, they did not like how season 8 ended, especially with the murdering of Daenerys, and it just sort of came from left field. They drew out what should have been a 2-season arc and put it in like 3 episodes, and there's going to be people that argue, well, no, they've been building up the whole series, like she's been slowly getting crazier and crazy. Well, that's just because you're not a fan of Daenerys. But that section of the audience who just completely hated season 8, their voice was broadcasted loud. And there's this such thing as like bandwagoning, and that's sort of what happened with season 8. Now, like I said, I've drawn criticism on it, and there are certain things that I did not like about season 8. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of fucking things that I didn't like about Game of Thrones season 8, but just all these idiots online who are just like, cancel it. Oh, we're never going to watch it again. Burn it. Oh, this spin-off House of the Dragon that's coming out, we're not going to watch it. That's bull. That's just a bunch of turds who, just like me, are going to watch House of the Dragon and drop everything they're doing, making sure they're paying attention when it does come out. But overall, and I'm sorry this has been a much more opinionated sort of like rant here, but the whole point of this video was for me to share my opinion that I think with time, the hate for Game of Thrones is going to die down, just like how terrible or how much people forgot about certain points in Breaking Bad and how bad it was. Overall, it's labeled as, one of the greatest or the greatest series of all time. The same thing's going to happen with Game of Thrones. And I think that's why it's been sort of lackluster on this news for House of the Dragon. Like, we haven't really... We knew that they're moving forward with the whole 10-episode first season plot, but usually we get some sort of casting news first. I think what happened was there was a pilot that was expedited, it was filmed, and then they recast that, but it was probably good enough to greenlight the whole series. And that's why, we haven't really been hearing that much news about it, is the fact that they're waiting for the hate to sort of die down. But while I'm here, and since we're on the subject, I have been getting I normally say a bunch. I guess it hasn't really been a bunch. I've gotten 2 different scripts for this up-and-coming House of the Dragon series, and they're not even scripts. They're just like 2 different summarizations of the first few episodes that supposedly these people have been backhands with. They're like people who were working on the set. If you all watching want, let me know down below in the comment section, but I can actually make... Just like the good old days, I can make a few videos discussing those potential plot summary or whatever the hell you want to call them. I will say that the actors that they've told me, and I'm not going to, spoil that here, but the actors that have told me that have been chosen to play the main leads for the House of the Dragon series are relatively unknown, which in my opinion, that's kind of a good thing. They said they have more theater experience, so they're known on like the theater circuit, but it's not like someone that you've seen on movies, which is largely... similar, aside from like Lena Headey and Peter Dinklage. That's how they did it with the first season of Game of Thrones, and now they're world-renowned actors. One of the plot summaries that I've been sent actually mentions that the lead has taken over something like 12 years in sword training, which when I read, I got extremely excited about, because after watching Netflix's The Witcher series and those fight scenes, I realized that Game of Thrones had a lot of catching up to do. I mean, dude, what? That one, I think it was in like episode 2, Geralt sawed the dude's face off with just like 2 swings of a sword. It was nuts. I mean, the fact that Henry Cavill's like 6'5" and like 200 pounds, it's actually believable that he's able to do something like that with the amount of power. So that lets me know, and I'm glad that The Witcher came out when it did, sort of maybe while they're filming these early episodes, that they can hire a really good stunt coordinator and sort of take a note from them about these battle scenes. I mean, I've got family members who don't even watch anything fantasy related, and I sent them a gif of that fight scene, and they were like, yo, I stayed up all night watching that shit, son. But just to sort of round this out and end this video, I enjoyed Game of Thrones as a whole. It still, in my book, stands as the greatest television series of all time. What do I rank Game of Thrones Season 8 out of all of the seasons? Probably the last one. Like, I would rank it number 8, I guess. I didn't enjoy... I would say a good 60% of how Season 8 went, and 100% of everything involved with Daenerys' plot in season 8. Like, there were several awesome scenes that she was in. I didn't enjoy it as at that season as a whole. Does it affect the show and how it's looked in my book, or how I rank it, or how much I love it? Fuck no. And I'm pretty sure every single person watching this video, or anyone that's a fan of my channel, will know that. I've always been a fan of Game of Thrones, and I knew, and I've said this for years now, that no matter how it ends, it's still going to be the greatest show, just for all the stuff that they've managed to accomplish. I mean, in this world, numbers don't lie, and this show has put up the numbers. Since I feel like it would be a good part of the therapeutic process, if you all want, let me know down below in the comment section, and I'll make a few, maybe 2 to 3 videos on specific moments in Game of Thrones Season 8 that I didn't enjoy, and I'll criticize them for, 10 to 15 minutes in a whole video if y'all want. With that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could, please slap a like on this video. The like goal is going to be 420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then turn your notifications on, because it's the new year and I'm back. Long night. I want to thank you all so much for watching. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews.